All right, good evening, everyone. Last week, we did not get to have our Tuesday grammar and mechanics class, so today we will continue. So last week, we were supposed to start on verbs, but this week, we will begin with it. And then when we meet again on another Tuesday, we will go into problems with verbs. So this is just like an introduction to the topic. Let's go to the word of the day. So the word of the day for today is imbue. So imbue can be used as a synonym for endow, which means to provide with something freely or naturally, and can also mean to permeate or influence in a way that suggests colored dye permeating cloth fabric. Example sentence: the children were imbued with a passion for nature by their parents, both biologists. So like its synonym infuse, imbue implies the introduction of one thing into another so as to affect it throughout. Someone's voice can be imbued with pride, for example, or a photograph might be imbued with a sense of melancholy. In the past, imbue has been used synonymously with imbrue, imbrue, an obscure word meaning to drench or stain, but the two words are likely unrelated. Imbue comes from the Latin verb imbuere, not sure, I-M-B-U-E-R-E, meaning to dry, wet, or moisten. Imbrue has been traced back through Anglo-French and Old French to the Latin verb beber. Again, can't speak Latin. B-I-B-E-R-E, meaning to drink, which is kind of similar to beber in Spanish, right? So what is a verb? A verb is a word that denotes an action, run right, a state of being, be, seem, or a condition, bloom, sit. Verbs can change form to indicate person, number, tense, voice, and mood. So in today's class, we won't be going into number and person in depth because I assume that you guys already know about using verbs in regarding to person. So I see, he sees, you see, yeah, those stuff, and number as well. So this introductory session speaks mostly to the principle of forms, voice, and mood of verbs. So let's start with the principal forms. So all English verbs have 5 main forms, except for the verb be, which has 8 forms. So first we have the base form, which is the form you'll find if you look for the verb in the dictionary. So just for example, live a week. Then we have the present tense, which indicates an action occurring at the moment or habitually. It also introduces quotations, literary events, and scientific facts. So from the same 2 words that we used before, live and awake, they would be the present tense of the verbs. Then you have past tense, which indicates an action, completed at a specific time in the past. So lived, awoke. Past participle, used with have, has, or had to form the perfect tense, with a form of the be verb to form the passive voice and as an adjective. So examples of the past participle, we have has lived, have lived, had awoke, has awakened. And an example of a past participle being used as an adjective, we have the polished silver. So polished here, past participle of polish, it is used as an adjective. And lastly, we have the present participle. And this is used with a form of the be verb to form the progressive tenses. Can also be used as a noun and as an adjective. So examples, living, awaking, right? And for the noun, we have the writing is finished, writing, present participle of write, used as a noun. And for adjective, we have the smiling man, present participle of smile, used as an adjective in the clause, right? So in your dictionary, because of course you might not know the past participle or present participle at times, or you'll forget, you can use your dictionary to help you. So usually in your dictionary, it will show you the base form of the verb. So we have sing. It will show you the part of speech, which is verb in this case, so V for verb. It will give you the preferred past tense form first. So sang would be the preferred past tense, and often sung, another form of past tense. Then it will give you the past participle, which is again sung, and then the present participle, which is singing, right? So past tense and past participle forms of irregular verbs. So regular verbs always add D or ED to the base form, to the base verb to form the past tense and past participle. Irregular verbs, by contrast, do not form the past tense and past participle in a consistent way. So here we have some examples. Be, was, were, been. Began, begin, begun. Fall, fell, fallen. Go, went, gone. And all of these are in the order base verb, past tense, and past participle. So with irregular verbs, it is inconsistent in formation. So sometimes one base form of a verb can have different past tense and past participle. This can change the meaning and context of a sentence. So here we have two base forms of a verb. We have bid. The first example, we have I bid, I have bidden, which means to invite or command. Then we have I bid, I have bid, to make an offer at an auction, sale, or when playing cards. Then we have hang, I hanged, I have hanged, referring to death by hanging. Then we have I hang, I hung, I have hung, referring to all other means of hang, including, hanging your clothes on the line, hanging up something on a hook, etc., etc. So again, if you're not sure which form to use, one base form can have different past tense and past participle, use your dictionary. That's the easiest means to understand which one to use. Just use your dictionary, if you can at the moment, right? And then we move on to difference between past participle and adjective forms of verbs. So as I said before, some forms of verbs, they can be used as adjectives, they can also be used as nouns, they can also be used as adverbs. So here, know the difference in spelling between the past participle of and the adjective form from the following verbs. So you have to drink, I have drunk, a drunken brawl. To rot, I have rotted, rotten beams. To shrink, I have shrunk, shrunken cheeks, right? So each of these words and many other verbs, they can be used in more than one context. They're still verbs, but they can have additional roles in a sentence. So with that being said, we'll talk about the types of verbs. And there are three types of verbs: the transitive, intransitive, and auxiliary verbs. So a verb is called transitive if the action does not stop with the doer, but passes on to the object of the action. Example, I kick the ball. So I, the subject, the doer of the action, kick the verb, the ball, which is the object in the sentence. So it's almost like in physics when the energy is transferred from one object to another. But here in the sentence, it'll be from the subject to the object. So transitive verbs can take 4 types of objects. We have the direct object, he teaches French. Indirect object, he teaches the students French. Passive object, the students are taught by him. And the reflexive object, he cut himself, right? So notice the differences in how these sentences are written and how the objects are introduced. So, with the direct objects, it's direct, it's there. With the indirect object, the students replaces the French, so it's like in the middle between the verb and the original object in the first sentence. With the passive object, the students, which, are the object, they are highlighted instead of, he teaches. So it's by him. And then lastly, the reflexive object, the subject performs the action on themselves. Next, we have intransitive verbs. A verb is called intransitive if the action stops with the door. Example, I fall. Impersonal verbs, that is, those whose subject is the pronoun it, are all intransitive. It is raining, it seems, etc. So transitive verbs can take on cognate and causative objects. So a cognate object is an implied or inherent object. Example, he ran a race, he lived a life, he died a death, he sighed a sigh. So the object can be implied from the verb alone. So ran, a race, lived, a life, died, a death. Yeah. And then we have the causative object. So certain intransitive verbs, when causing something to happen, become transitive and take a causative object. Example, I boiled the water and I walked my dog. So it causes the object to take an action, right? So verbs can act as both transitive and intransitive verbs. So there is no strict rule that says that, boiled cannot be transitive or walk cannot be transitive. They can be used in both forms. All right, so let's go into to be, to become, and to seem. So certain intransitive verbs, particularly the verb to be, and verbs such as to become and to seem, require a word or group of words, complement, to make complete sense. Example, he is ill, so you can't just have he is. He became king, you can't just have he became. He seems to be happy, you can't just say he seems. So these verbs, they need a complement in order for the sentence they are attached to or clause they are attached to make complete sense. So factitive verbs, which are verbs used to indicate state or condition, although transitive verbs also require a complement to make a complete predicate. So they made him leader. We elected our king or queen, yeah. So these are just 2 examples of verbs that they need additional words or word to bring sense to the sentence. And when we go more into parts of sentences, we will discuss more about the predicate and the subject and all of those things. Then we move on to auxiliary verbs. So auxiliary verbs help to form the tenses of other words. The verbs are to be, to have, along with will and do. Example, I have seen, I am going, I will go, do you see? While can, must, and ought are not auxiliary verbs, they can be used with the base form or infinitive form of verbs. They are called modals. So I can go, I must go, I ought to go. So more modals include could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, sorry. And so all of these, both auxiliary verbs and modals, they are classified as helping verbs. So the auxiliary verb do and its forms does and did combine with the base form of a verb to ask a question or to emphasize something. It can also combine with the word not to create an emphatic negative statement. So we have, do you hear those dogs barking? I do hear them barking. So this is the emphatic statement. Or, I do not want to have to call the police about those dogs, which is an emphatic negative statement, since not is in the sentence. Have, has, and had combined with a past participle, usually ending in D, T, or N, to form the perfect tenses. The present perfect tense is used for actions that can continue in the present. It should not be confused with the simple past tense. So we have those dogs barked all day, simple past tense. Those dogs have barked all day, present tense. And then we have, actually, this should be present perfect tense. My apologies. And then we have those dogs had barked all day, which is the past perfect tense. Forms of be combine with a present participle ending in ing to form the progressive tenses, which express continuing action. Do not confuse the simple present tense or the present perfect with these progressive forms. Unlike the simple present, which indicates an action that occurs frequently and might include the present moment, the present progressive form indicates an action that is going on right now. In its past form, the progressive tense indicates actions that are going on simultaneously. So we have those dogs bark all the time, simple present. Those dogs are barking all the time, present progressive. Those dogs were barking all day while I was trying to study, past progressive, right? So each context of the sentence, you understand that the present progressive shows actions that can occur in the present moment that are going on right now, and past progressive indicates actions that are going on simultaneously. So while the person was trying to study, the dogs were barking. So let's talk about be and the passive voice. When be is used as an auxiliary verb, it is preceded by a modal verb, such as can or may. I may be leaving tomorrow. When been is the auxiliary verb, it is preceded by a form of have. I have been painting my room all day. Forms of be combine with the past participle to form the passive voice, which is often used to express a state of being instead of an action. So the dogs were being scolded by their owner. So that is the state of being. They were being scolded. They were scolded. I was satisfied by her answer. Was satisfied, state of being. So let's talk about verbs followed by gerunds. Some verbs like avoid can be followed by a gerund, but not an infinitive. We avoided climbing, not to climb, the mountain during the storm. And more examples are listed below. We have admit, advise, regret, suggest, support, tolerate, propose, etc., etc. Some verbs like attempt can be followed. Some verbs like attempt can be followed by an infinitive, but not a gerund, right? So we attempted to reach, not reaching, the summit when the weather cleared. So other examples, we have afford, appear, choose, claim, decide, threaten, want, wish, etc., etc. And then we have verbs that can be followed by either a gerund or an infinitive with no change in meaning. So we began climbing, we began to climb. Other verbs have a different meaning when followed by a gerund than they do when followed by an infinitive. She stopped eating, meaning that she halted eating. Yeah, she stopped chewing. Versus she stopped to eat. So she stopped somewhere to eat her food. Different meanings. We have the gerund first and then the infinitive. Some more examples of such verbs that can be followed by either gerund or infinitives. Begin, continued, hate, like, love, prefer, remember, start, stop, try. And with that being said, we can move on to voice and mood. So what is voice? Voice shows whether the subject of a verb does the action or suffers the action. There are two voices, the active voice, I pushed her, and the passive voice, I was pushed. The passive voice downplays the actors as well as the action, so much so that the actors are often left out of the sentence. As was said before, I was pushed. Who pushed the person? We don't know. So the actor or the doer of the action is left out of the sentence. So, unless you have a good reason to use the passive voice, prefer the active voice. It is more forceful, and readers usually want to know who or what does the action. So instead of having polluting chemicals were dumped into the river, we can put industrial products corporation dumped polluting chemicals into the river. So the subject is present in the sentence in the active voice. So when the recipient of the action is more important than the doer of the action, however, the passive voice is the more appropriate choice. Example of this, after her heart attack, my mother was taken to the hospital. So the heart attack and the fact that the mother was taken to the hospital is more important than who brought her to the hospital. So choosing the correct voice, it depends on your context, your again, if the recipient is more important than the doer, there are certain variables that you have to take into consideration. But generally, active voice is preferred, especially in your essay writing when you need to be more direct, you need to be detailed. So we need to know who, what, when, where, how. All these specific details need to be included in your writing. So of course, in other genres of writing, like narrative, poetry, etc., there is a little more liberty, but still you don't want to overdo the passive and you don't want to overdo the active in those genres. So let's talk about mood. Mood is a name given to the form of a verb which shows the manner in which the action is represented. So there are four moods: indicative, imperative, subjunctive, infinitive. So indicative mood is used for statements of fact or suppositions regarded as facts and for questions. So the following sentences, they are in the order simple present tense, I should say, continuous tense, perfect tense, and perfect continuous tense. So here we have, I move, I am moving, I have moved, I have been moving. I moved, I was moving, I had moved, I had been moving. I will move, I will be moving, I would have moved, I would have been moving. I should move, I should be moving, I should have moved, I should have been moving. So as you can see, with the different tenses, they are different verbs there to how do you say this? Signal which tense is being used. So, of course, you have present, past, future, and conditional, future in the past. And each of them have their own tenses as well. So this is for the indicative mood. So the imperative mood is used to express orders, requests, or sometimes advice. It is formed from the second person of the present tense. Come here, forgive me, never despair. The only exception to the rule for the formation of the imperative is the verb to be. We have be careful. Let is used for the first or third person. Let us run. Then move on to the subjunctive mood, which expresses uncertainty, wish, or hope. So it expresses a supposition that is not likely to be realized. If I were you, I would accept his offer. It expresses a wish. I wish he were coming. It expresses a condition not fulfilled. Had you come earlier, you might have seen him. And it expresses a command. The judge ordered that he be paid at once. And so the infinitive mood is made up of all the non-finite parts of verbs. These non-finite parts are those which have no endings imposed on them by number or person. They are the infinitive present, to move. So the infinitive can be used as a noun. So example, to hesitate is a mistake. To hesitate is the infinitive and it is the noun in the sentence. It can also be used as an adjective. Here is a tie to match. To match is the infinitive. It's used as an adjective. And the infinitive can also be used as an adverb. This story is hard to believe. To believe is the infinitive and adverb in the sentence. Next we have, my apologies. The infinitive perfect, to have moved. The infinitive future, to be about to move. And also the infinitive passive, to be moved. Then we have the present participle and gerund, moving. What are the difference between these two? The present participle forms a continuous tense of a verb. Example, he was singing, and acts as a verbal adjective, a talking parrot. Talking, present participle, I should say, and it is the adjective in a sentence. On the other hand, gerund is used partly as a noun and partly as a verb. So running is exhausting, running, noun. My hobby is collecting stamps. Collecting is the, verb. Usually preceded by an adjective or a preposition when used as a noun. So if it is a gerund, look out for an adjective or preposition before that word. And then lastly, we have the past participle, moved. So the past participle usually ends in D, N, or T. It helps form perfect tenses. I have taken, acts as an adjective, his chosen career, chosen. And it acts as an adjective. The thief seized with fear, fled. Seized is the past participle and is used as an adjective in the sentence. So that is all for today. We have went through the introduction to verbs, and the next time we meet, we will be going through problems with verbs. So I'll see you probably sometime next year. And then, I'll see you on Thursday and then sometime next year for Tuesday. But I hope you all are well. I hope that you have learned something so far. And I hope that your Christmas break will be one that is rejuvenating and interesting, because nobody wants it to be boring. So until then, I will see you on Thursday, and we will continue on paragraphs. And then after that, we will take a little break and we'll be back together again. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.